I mean, I wasn't thinking about talking about that hymn, but there it is. I mean, what is that wooden leg? So, and I'm imagining medicine, the state of medicine when those lyrics first crystallized. And I'm also imagining maybe the wake of the Civil War. And it's so good for us to remember that happy tune was sung by people who knew great suffering. So that is an African American hymn, spiritual. So these are people who have endured and are enduring oppression. And then on top of that, the ravages of war. And it is against the backdrop of all that midwinter, all that gloaming, all that bleakness, that there's a vision of hope. And it's the same in this biblical verse. The word which Isaiah, the son of Amoz, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. Now when we read it, it's just beautiful words in the Bible. And beaten swords into plowshares, and they shall study war no more. This is written to people who are being oppressed. This is written to people who are being threatened by the superpower Assyria. I mean, it's the same message as Thanksgiving. You know, Thanksgiving was born from scarcity. Do we experience enough scarcity to be grateful? Do we even really understand what hope is anymore? Because we're so insulated from the realities of life. That's the question. But I didn't mean to say anything about that. That has nothing to do with my sermon. All right. So the first thing I wanted to mention was the Advent conspiracy. Because here we are. It's the first Sunday of Advent. I was a kid. I went to Baptist church. I went every Sunday morning. I went every Sunday night. I went on Wednesday nights. I went a lot. We never mentioned Advent. Because where I grew up in the South, Advent was something Catholics did. And if Catholics did if they went south, we went north. And our whole religious experience was based on being different than them. So we could ensure that we're saved and they're not. But thank goodness for something called Vatican II, a Roman Catholic conclave in the early 1960s in which the Roman Catholic Church said, let's open up to other Christians and to the world. And then as a result, Protestants began revisiting themes in Roman Catholicism that we had forgotten and we had neglected. And one of them is to celebrate the idea of a church year. I mean, there are a lot of ways to mark time. And you can mark time by the ads in the paper. On Wednesday, it's the grocery stores. On Thursday, it's the department stores. On Friday, it's the new movies. And you can see there's a calendar created for us by people who want our money. And the whole idea of Black Friday, which of course is a non-event, which doesn't matter, but we heard a lot about. Because there's a great conspiracy between the people who want our money and the people in charge of the media. They're one and the same. But the Advent conspiracy consists of people who recognize a different calendar and who are living their lives by a different measure. And our measure is this. We are moving toward new life. We are moving toward the celebration of the birth of Christ. The 4 weeks of Advent prepare us for something new. This is what time of year it is for us. It's not the time to buy and sell. It is the time to prepare. We, like Mary was great with child, we are great with something. That's the question for all of us. What are we great with? What are we bearing? What are we carrying? Do you have an anxiety? Is there a relationship in your life? Is there something about your employment or lack of employment that you are carrying, you are great with? This is the time to prepare for something new. Well, let me say a couple more things about Advent because I just love to think about it. The other thing about the Advent conspiracy is this. We are moving toward the winter solstice. We are moving toward the shortest day of the year in the northern hemisphere. Why are you clapping, Joyce? Oh, that's right. You see, you're part of the Advent conspiracy. According to the Advent conspiracy, that means that soon the days will get longer. And the Advent conspiracy means that when you're down to the last leaf on the tree, that's when you get powerful. When there is a single light in the darkness, that's when you get excited. The Advent conspiracy means as Mother Nature, in her waltz, in the waltz between the sun and earth, and this is going to be a moment, the solstice, when the northern hemisphere, I wish I had somebody to waltz with. No, Anita? But just imagine this waltz between the sun and earth. This is a moment where the northern hemisphere discreetly turns its back. So in Adelaide, in Sao Paulo, and Jakarta, they can have their full embrace of sun, and we're a little modestly shielded from it. But at that time, when the day is short, when the light is lacking, we celebrate life. That's our contrary prophetic conspiracy. When everyone else is sure there's no hope, that's when we find hope. That's what's going on with Advent. Now, this text, let's move on to the next screen. Let's move on to the next screen. Here we go. He shall judge between the nations, shall decide for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Ancient Israelites were like the Minutemen. There wasn't a standing army. Rather, all the farmers, when it was a time of war, would refashion their agricultural tools into weapons. And then when the war is over, they return home, they refashion their weapons into agricultural tools. You just have one piece of wood with something metal at the end. That's all you've got. It is your all-purpose tool. This is an image of one of those ancient Israelite militiamen returning to the farm after the horror and the fury of battle, and laying that sword against a rock and taking a hammer and beating beating, beating, beating the killing point out of that weapon. And at the same time, the farmer was beating all the fury and trauma of war out of his system. With every beat, with every drop of sweat, this great act of transformation was happening. And the idea was that eventually that sword could be refashioned into a plow, a stick with a piece of metal at the end that was hooked like this, that could be dragged on the ground. I know I shouldn't do this, but where you're just hoeing like this with that hook plow at the end. So the sword point has become a plow point. It is hard work to make peace. It doesn't just happen on December 24th when we say, "Let there be peace on earth." It doesn't just happen when we finally get to the Christmas service and talk about peace on earth, goodwill toward men. You must beat. You must work to change the weapon, the thing that hurts, into something that's useful and productive. Now, this is the kind of secret jujitsu of spirituality, and it's only for those of you who are ready for your graduate course. I mean, is everybody here ready to move from kindergarten? There are things in your life which hurt, which are sword points. With God's grace, if you work on them, you can make those very same points into the productive tools for digging deeper into your soul and planting new life. That's not easy, though. It takes work. The first thing you have to do is you have to take hold of that painful thing. You have to pick it up. You will have to talk about it. You will have to think about it. You will have to work on it. I'm not sure what the painful thing is for you. Is it a relationship in your life that has been neglected? You have just let it go. You're just letting it be. You don't want to touch it. Is it an experience or a memory you don't want nothing to do with? This is the time to take it and refashion it into blessing. But it is work to beat swords into plowshares. But that's why we have a season of Advent, so that as we talk about being great with things, like Mary was great with child, this is your labor of Advent. You're 4 weeks away. It's kind of uncomfortable. Do you remember what it looks like when you're 4 weeks away? It's not supposed to feel great. But now's the time to work, to participate in this labor of love so there can be new life at Christmas. And then let's go to the final screen. It's so interesting. Isaiah has this beautiful vision about what's going to happen. At the end of days, there will be peace. There will be the kingdom that Kyle described in your prayer when you talked about the Lord coming again. Still, at the end, Isaiah says, come on, guys, will you help me a little bit? Rather than simply wait for God to do it, can we walk together in the light of the Lord? Because there are things we can do. I want to talk finally now about the light of the Lord. Let us walk in the light of the Lord. Because right now, as Christians, we walk in the light. That same light that Paul saw on the Damascus Road. It is the light of the glory of God shining off the face of Jesus. Christians, when we see Jesus, and we have to see Jesus in our spiritual imaginations right now, but when we see Jesus, we see the light of God reflecting off Jesus' face. That's the light we walk in. But you know, the Jews who are celebrating Hanukkah right now, and they are lighting candles, they have light too. And they said, we saw that same light reflecting off the face of Moses. And that's why Moses had to shield his face from us. Because it blinded us. The light of God reflected off of Moses. Do you know what the Muslims say? They say they've seen the light. And it's purer and brighter in Islam than it was in Christianity or Judaism. Have you ever known any Mormons? Now they've got the latest version of the story. They claim that they have new light that dwarfs all the other lights before. This season, every season, let us be grateful for our light. But let us also remember one other thing. That lucky old sun. You know that lucky old sun that rolls around heaven all day? What does that lucky old sun know about light? That any light we see on the planet Earth is from a single source. All these sightings of the light in all these different faiths and religions are but emanations of the one true light. That's what the lucky old sun knows. So the question is, our light is in the light of the Lord, the light shining off Jesus' face. We will let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. But we have no quarrel. We have no fight. We're going to lay down our weapons in the battle of religions. And we have nothing bad to say about anybody else's light. We only are saying, let our light shine. That is our message here. So at this point, we are going to take communion today. And I want to invite you to come walk in the light of the Lord. And the first thing we're going to do is sing our communion hymn, which is, and what's its name? We Shall Overcome. And as we do so, we will have our fellowship offering, a special offering we do on Communion Sundays. So we have funds for benevolence in the church. And after that, we will take the Lord's Supper together.